This is why I can't have clean build plates. So from the last video, A-Track has matured a lot. Things have come a very long way, and I just thought I'd give you all an update on what's going on with it, show you some of the modules, and show you a color change in action so you can better understand how these things work, and just answer some of the common questions I get. And we'll go ahead and start with what the heck this is. The Raven is just a platform for testing the cassettes and the software and really flushing things out, finding problems, and just developing the project further. It's also more cost effective, especially only being 4 colors instead of 8 at a time. It's already been designed to daisy chain, however, so if people want to build this, it is on the GitHub already. You can go as many colors as you want, sets of 4. We actually have a user in the Discord that has stretched this out and is building it with 8 colors, going up to, I believe he's got a K series Creality. So as far as modules and components go, we'll just go ahead and get started with the Raven and what's going on with it. By the way, Fystec is actually making frame kits for this, so if you want to build one of these, go check them out. I'll put a link in the description. Starting off on the bottom, we are using the Big Tree Tech MMB can, and I've got this set up right now as bare minimum as possible. As the lead hardware developer on this project, mine is together and apart more often than anyone else's, so that's why I'm just running it as bare minimal as possible, but also to show that it can work just absolutely stripped down. The Pogo Boards are actually now suspended on springs to help engage with the cassettes better. I don't know if you can see that movement. This is supposed to be screwed. I haven't done it again because mine's always coming apart and going back together as things change. But it's actually being forced forwards. It's a little bit proud of the back here. And when you dock the cassette, what it does is it just make sure that that mates really good with the other pogo pin. It's been helping with reliability. Now you might ask what that is, and I'll get into it in a second. This is what the actual normal hub looks like. We've got a pass through on each side, and then we've got the 4 for the actual Raven itself. And you can see the configuration right here, pretty straightforward. There's a spot for a filament sensor here. All that is a ball bearing and an end stop. We've made the small filament sensor here to put in line with the Bowden path if people need to, like for a tool head sensor, and it works exactly the same. These spots up here are for when we get around to active drying, and that Pogo board happens to match the footprint of this one. However, you can see the cutouts are quite different. So here we have the filament cutter, which is an adaptation of the hub for applications where you can't realistically put a filament cutter on your tool head, or you just don't want to. And again, you don't have to run a filament cutter, but I'll get into that in a minute. So what it does is the filament tip will come through, it'll cut it, it'll come back over, and now this goes up to your printer's tool head. And you can see here, that's where that same style filament sensor would be. There's a lot more complicated ways of making a filament sensor, but this is just super reliable and very simple, very cost-effective way of doing it. So when we started developing this, we were actually doing it on an Ender 3, which obviously had a Mark 8 hot end. Now, we hadn't really tried running a filament changer on any other kind of hot end, except a Fadus Dragon with a carrot feeder when we initially had this idea. And something we really hated about it was tip shaping. And we found that on the Ender 3, when we were doing our first prototyping, that tip shaping was a lot easier, and we didn't understand why. It was ignorance. That's why initially we did not want to have a cutter at all. But after messing with a lot of hot ends, I can tell you these are pretty easy to do. The V6 is about the same, but when you start getting into the other hot ends like the Fadus Dragon, the Revo, these new integrated styles, it's just a really big chore, and it's a lot easier to just yank the filament out and cut it, or cut it in the tool head and leave it in there. That's kind of why most systems operate with a cutter. Now if you want to do tip shaping, like I said, and not use a cutter, you don't have to use the cutter. We just made the cutter so that people that don't want to do the tip shaping and can't really implement one on their tool head have an option to use this system. So now I'll run you through how the new extruder works. It's pretty basic, but it's got some good features. It's been hollowed out, less plastic. Filament sensor, same style, it's right there, integrated to it. It's got a pass-through. A community member actually took the one I was working on and just made it a lot better, a lot neater. It uses the same BMG gear kit, except now obviously it is a geared extruder instead of being completely direct drive off of the stepper motor. And another step towards reliability that we've kind of flushed out is this is a servo saver style servo arm, and what that servo saver style enables is anytime the arm is touching this guidler at all, it's full engagement. This entire sweep here is full engagement. And what we found is it's really hard to get them all to align exactly the same every time. That's why we implemented that. But what happens if you overdrive the servo, you're getting it really hot or things are starting to break. So we put the servo saver on there, and if the servo goes too far, well, the arm just cams upwards and the servo continues to turn. And like I said, we've got constant pressure on the guidler, so the rotation distance stays consistent. My stuff is together and apart more often than anyone else's, so please forgive my wiring here. However, that's that new extruder in place, and we'll get into the respooler that we're using in this. Now if you look, if I can do it one-handed, there's obviously no electric hooked up or anything to this, and it's driving the filament back and spinning the spool. How we're doing that is there's a one-way bearing in here and a tension arm with another roller bearing keeping the filament pressed on it. Whenever you back drive the filament, it turns this wheel, which obviously spins the spool, keeping the filament nice and contained. And that right there is the biggest change that we've had to do. Now I say that because obviously the cassette is much larger than it used to be. And you can see the old extruder was just literally right off of the stepper motor. Even though it's much larger, we actually still have a version that's printable on a 220 size printer. And we have a much larger cavity here for running an active dryer. It's in the works. I don't feel safe giving anyone that yet because, one, these have to be printed in polycarbonate ABS or nicer material. Even with a blower going on the heating element, you will get localized hot spots and it will warp things. You get your cassette stuck in a slot. I can go on about it. It's just not ready yet, but it's being worked on. I don't foresee this cavity changing much, if at all. And the cassette being larger is why the 8-track 2.4 that was seen at Rocky Mountain Rep Fest has been pretty much gutted up top. I still want to use the printer, so I've just got a spool going through the hub there. And this printer's gotten a couple updates since then. It's now got a ultra high flow hot end on it, and something we quickly found is when you're printing fast with the free coasting system, if you have a lot of colors, there's just going to be more drag, and we've actually started coming up with a solution on that as well. So to avoid any weird artifacts from printing faster and having to drag the filament through a hub and through a cassette and all that, something I've started looking into is a linear buffer, kind of like what you see on the back of a bamboo printer. And this will be getting a video of its own. You can already see that it's just a linear buffer with some other stuff going on that just enables less drag to the tool head. If you're just looking for an open AMS system and the whole cassette thing's not really your cup of tea, it's in the works right now. We've got all the modules, we've got the software, might as well. We're making one that doesn't have cassettes. It will only be 4 colors and it won't be nearly as modular as this. But soon. Major cookie points if you can tell me how many color changes and how long this benchy took. But there's your 2-color benchy. So I've got blue loaded in right now, which is T0. I'm gonna go ahead and hit T3, which is for cassette 4. So it has taken the filament out of the tool head. Keep in mind that all the speeds and values and distances for this right now are very liberal. Just testing when I get things right. There's the filament up for the cut. Broke it off, and now it's going to feed into the tool head. When we get to the tool head, there's a couple ways of doing this. Obviously you could do a purge tower, but you have to get that tuning pretty spot on. Or you could go the easy way, which is kind of what I've elected to do. And I'll show you that here in a second. You can see the guidler just opened. The tool head now has the filament. They are still working in tandem. You'll hear the servo disengage from the cassette here in a second. There it is. And what it's going to do is it's going to make a stereotypical poop as it purges out the old color, which is blue, so we'll see a blue to black. There you go. Blue to black poop. Obviously it kicked it off of the bed. Doing it this way on this particular printer, we lose about 30 millimeters of print volume on the side of the printer. But it's a 250 by 210, so it was a weird size anyways, and that just goes to show that there's a lot of ways to do this. Could you stop cleaning yourself on my printer? Huh? She don't give a crap. So the Pogo boards have been redesigned. We've moved the Pogo pins actually further down on the board. The reason for that is, so for the can board version of this, we needed more space on one side than the other in order to get all the circuitry on it. Obviously this one is just the dummy board. To keep some continuity between things, we've just changed these boards to where the Pogos are more towards the bottom, just like on the can board. Hopefully one day I'll get to show you the actual can board, but developing such things is just ridiculously expensive. With that being said, there's a buy me a coffee in the description, and there's actually a Patreon too, which I think the next video update will go there first before it comes to YouTube. If you want to check those out. This is all on the GitHub. Everything's free. Everyone can have at it. Don't feel obligated to support, but if you want to, the option's there. Bonus clip, we'll go back to blue. So they're working together right now. I'm going to take it out of the tool head. Clear the filament sensor, so it's going to yank it back a little bit faster. You can see the respooler working. Now it's just making sure that the hub is clear. There's the tip from the blue. Cut it off. And it's going to load into the tool head, and we'll have a black to blue poop. We've got this set really slow right now just to be consistent. I like being consistent over fast right now just because we're testing things frequently. You can see that it opened up, it's got it. The extruder and the cassette just opened up, so it's going to start its little poop macro. Obviously we could speed this up, but we're just playing it safe right now. There you go. There's your black to blue.